Sorry we're starting a little late, but we had a microphone disaster this morning. So, nope, I don't want anybody to think that just because I'm using this particular microphone that I'm Luke. Okay? Everybody got that? Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure. If you remember, last Sunday we started our new semester with our study of Proverbs for God's people. And we had several points that we considered last week. So let's do a quick review of the points that we looked at. We determined that this entire book can give us valuable insight on how to live our lives, even today, roughly 2,700 years after it was written. We also noticed that the author is almost exclusively King Solomon, and he was known throughout the world for his wisdom and his love of God. We also figured that there's meaning and power in Proverbs and the positive effects they can provide us today in our daily lives. We also figured that wisdom and fear of the Lord is extremely important. It was important back then, and it's important to us today. Then we talked about that we have, but we got to choose the life path we go on. Either a broad road, which can lead to darkness, or a narrow road, which can lead to what? Light, right. And then we reflected on wisdom and its importance and the difference between it and just having knowledge as we go through our lives. So today we're going to continue examining this concept of wisdom. Now, one of the things you'll notice in Proverbs is how much wisdom is emphasized. You know, and we talked a little bit about it last week. We're going to get into that a little heavier. And we're going to begin by asking ourselves the question, where can wisdom come from? Well, we're going to get into that. First, though, after class last week, out in the lobby, I was asked a question concerning our discussing the reasons people nowadays may quit going to church. And I don't see her today. But a lady asked me, if it's so important, why do we go out to eat or go shopping on Sunday? Can that have a negative effect since it causes so many people to have to work instead of going to church themselves? She remembered that back in the old days, everything was pretty much shut down except for police, fire, and emergency rooms. And I said, you know, that's a good question. And do me a favor, and when we start class next Sunday, bring it up, and we'll see what everybody says about it. And she said, well, I can't because I have to work. I won't be there. And I said, ooh. So I remember, y'all, of course, I'm old as the hills. I remember, no, I'm not as old as you. I'm not bragging. I remember Sunday, everything was closed. You had to get everything bought by, Saturday or you didn't get it. What was open back then, though? Police, fire department, usually. Some gas stations, yeah.
Well, I know at one time Walmart moved all, the pharmacy was the only thing that was open.
Only the pharmacy, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, what's happened? Do y'all think that it's bad for us to go out after church today and eat because somebody had to go in early to get all of the dishes ready and the table set and everything for us? Is that bad? They're going to make them work anyway? So if somebody does anything anyway, is that a good excuse? Gotcha. So, I don't know. Anybody got any ideas about that? Ooh, nobody does. Okay. What am I going to tell her then? Yes, ma'am.
Or that we never had kids playing sports on Sunday morning or Wednesday evenings either.
That's true. That was back in the old days. You didn't play baseball on Sunday mornings, and like right now, sometimes when you come to church, you could see that baseball field up there where Shiloh Road connects to Highway 7, and there'll be a whole bunch of kids out there playing. Anyway, one of those things. And I really think it's, like we discussed last week, I think it's a super negative thing for us to have church attendance basically go down. That's why it's so enlightening to see our church here in this congregation, the attendance continues to go up, and that makes you feel good. Yes?
I think it's a lifetime probably, maybe, no, I don't know for sure, but when you actually do want to be in the presence of the Lord more than anything else in your life,
Yep.
you don't have to worry about all that other stuff.
Good point. You only have to worry about yourself and how you feel and all of that, and then it's going to all work out. And God knows what's going on, doesn't He? Okay. But anyway, go back. Where can our wisdom come from? Yes. Somebody had something? Oh, God, yeah. That's going to be our question. Let's go ahead and look at James 1, 5, 6 in the New Testament. It says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. So, if we do believe and we don't doubt, that's the source that we can get wisdom from. Everybody agree? Okay. But how does God actually give us this wisdom? We can pray, yeah. But is there some kind of like, say we want the wisdom and everything, is there going to be some kind of miracle that all of a sudden we're wise? The ability to learn. You hit it great there. Good job, Dolores.
We have to learn to live out what we know.
Live out what we know, right. And if we do believe and we don't doubt, we're going to want to learn too, aren't we? Deep in our hearts, we just can't wait to learn everything we can about our Lord. Yes?
Proverbs leans towards training the young, and that's where the wisdom comes from the family, a godly family.
Absolutely.
And we need to always pray for these teachers
Mm-hmm.
and all here that's help training the young.
You bet. Absolutely. We can get through reading and studying God's Word. We can get wisdom that way. How about through prayer? It says to ask God. Can we pray and ask God to give us wisdom? Say even in a particular situation where we need Him to help us. And then we can get wisdom through the advice and the advice of dedicated and sincere servants of God, can't we? If we have a question, we don't know what to do, we want to know something deeper, there are people that can give us the wisdom that we need regarding some of these things. So, where's the best place then to find all of these things that we've discussed? What's the best place to find these paths to wisdom, do y'all think? If we want it. Where's a good place to find it? In the Bible, okay? Where's a good place to learn the Bible? Where's a great place to learn the Bible? Right where we are. Now, you said home too, right? You said church, okay. You said home. We can read our Bible at home, can't we? We can study at home, right? But we can really help ourselves if we come to church and we listen to the sermons and we go to our classes and we study and we get deep into things and really learn it. So it's important. We want to do it, but can there be a cost, a price to pay for following our gifted path of wisdom? Well, anybody think it could be bad, getting this wisdom? Well, let's look at Proverbs 4, verse 7, where it says, "The beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom, though it cost all you have, get understanding." We all know that there can be a price to pay for this gift and our resulting actions, don't we? There can be a price. We know that wise Christians all over the world are suffering from the enemies of Jesus and his church. And even in our, enlightened, one nation under God country, things aren't going as well here as even a few years ago, are they? As far as us getting some grief just by being Christians. Okay, 4 days ago, listen to this that just came out. An Irish teacher has, in his words, been placed behind bars because he would not call a boy a girl. Enoch Burke, who teaches history, politics, and German at Wilson's Hospital School, was arrested Monday after he violated a court order demanding he teach the school's current transgender philosophy. The order prohibits him from teaching classes or even being present on the school's campus in Westmeath, the Irish news outlet RTE reports. He is now in Mountjoy Prison, where he will stay until he purges his way of thinking or the court issues further orders. The initial ruling was handed down by High Court Judge Michael Quinn. His sentence can be up to 3 years. So you got a teacher in Ireland that's going to be in prison for 3 years because he won't call a boy a girl or a girl a boy or something.
That's happened here in the U.S.
Has it really?
The other day in the paper, the teacher was dismissed
Yeah.
because they would not use the gender pronouns.
Gender pronouns. And all of this is going on. And it's really, really bad when you think about it. So things can get tough for us. We know that. But you know what? Kind of going back to what Bert said, that's okay when we consider a couple of more verses here. Proverbs 4, 8, and 9, which say concerning gifted wisdom, cherish her, and she will exalt you. Embrace her, and she will honor you. She will give you a garland to grace your head and present you with a glorious crown. So there's what we can get if we pursue it anyway, no matter what the cost. Did y'all ever think about one of the wisest apostles, I think, that we know of in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul? Remember that he was doing great work, and he seemed to have a good attitude even when he was in a Roman prison. He was wise enough to know that this was going to be temporary in the long haul, wasn't he? Y'all agree with that? Okay. And we can be reminded that God himself wants us to have his gift when we read James 1:5, which, if you remember, said, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it'll be given. Okay? So, we can suffer if we're wise members of God, and we'll talk about that just a little later, but we still need to go after it, just like Proverbs advises us to do. Now, what happens to a Christian when he asks for and receives wisdom and applies it to his or her life? Okay? What happens to them when he does that? We know that there can be a downside. In Ecclesiastes 1:18, it says, the writer says, because in much wisdom there can be grief, much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increasing pain. Okay? So, once again, we see in Ecclesiastes that this can be a problem. How in the world could having wisdom, how could this be causing pain to the writer of Ecclesiastes?
Just like the guy that's in prison for 3 years, maybe. He has the wisdom to know the difference. Choose to do the right thing.
And he's suffering, right? And if you remember in Ecclesiastes, the book talks about this a lot of this very negatively, to wisdom and everything. But the writer's telling us that as we get older and we know what we need to do and where we need to go, and we see all of these people who are not doing it, this can kind of make us feel bad, can't it? You know, we see all of this stuff going wrong, and we know all they got to do is love God, and this would go away. And sometimes that's a problem to us. So what happens to a Christian when he asks for and receives wisdom and applies it? Well, the short answer is that person is able to read, learn, and wisely use the messages in the book of Proverbs and other places in the Bible to make the right choices. And Solomon helps us with this in chapters 10 through 31. Remember, it's important to read our Proverbs wisely. And we've discussed it before, but there's a difference between studying wisely and just reading. So we're going to start running through chapters 10 through 31, and in doing so, let's look at some guidelines that we can use when we study and read Proverbs 10 through 31 right quick. Some of the things we need to consider as we do this is that Proverbs cover general principles usually. They don't cover all the possible exceptions that you could have, okay? They're not necessarily promises or guarantees from God either. Just because there is a proverb in there, you say, well, that ought to apply to me. Well, not necessarily. It depends on you and the situation. Wisdom is rooted in our relationship with God, both as individuals and as a church congregation. Is this one of the reasons why church leadership is so important? Of course it is. If we're looking at our church leaders, we'd like to see wise people, shouldn't we? Okay. Wisdom needs to be applied in all areas of our life. And as such, Proverbs can give us a means to correctly recognize and deal with life situations. And life, y'all know, is complex, always has been. So, we need to draw on the wisdom of Proverbs as well as the other books, and that includes James, Job, and Ecclesiastes, to really understand life, the good parts and the suffering parts. If you remember, all these books go into the meaningless of human endeavor without God as the center of a person's life. God needs to be the center of our lives, okay? Wisdom is important for us to be effective teachers as we seek the lost, as we go out into the world and preach the gospel. And we've emphasized this before, but wisdom is super important for leaders of our church. Let's go ahead and go to Proverbs 10:27 now and look at it. Okay, the fear of the Lord adds length to life, but the years of the wicked are cut short. The fear of the Lord adds length to life, but the years of the wicked are cut short. What's the general principle here?
Sin leads us to death.
We've all seen that happen, haven't we? I mean,
Eternal side of this too.
Prolongs life in eternity, whereas, years of the wicked are cut short.
absolutely, absolutely.
It gives us that choice.
I'm sorry?
It gives us that choice.
It leaves us a choice. Once again, we talked about choices before. It leaves us a choice. If we take the narrow path that leads to light, it's a narrow path, and we may end up going, ooh, I don't know why I should be doing this, but deep down, like you said, we're going to get our reward for eternity, aren't we? One way or the other. That's right, one way or the other, which is there's a punishment side to it. Fearing the Lord, you get to think about loving and fearing the Lord. Y'all ever think about, does that mean you should be scared to death to pray? No. Fear, which is believing in, knowing, and respecting the Lord and His commandments, can put you in a position that can certainly be less dangerous to your health and well-being than not knowing or respecting the Lord and His ways. You can be in a Roman prison, and if you fear and love the Lord, you're going to be okay, sooner or later. And y'all, I think that there's really nothing like asking yourself the question, if something comes up, would God want me to do this? Have y'all ever done that? If something comes up and you're kind of wondering about it, is that a good question to ask yourself, Anthony? Does God want me to do this?
If you have to ask, he probably doesn't.
That's a good point. If you need to ask that, there's probably a pretty good reason why you should abandon it. My dear grandma always used a saying, I guess it's a parable, a modern parable actually, that says, when in doubt, throw it out. And she normally used that for cooking reasons, but you get to thinking about it just like you said. If you're doubting something, chances are you need to toss it. And if you do end up not doing it, what can that do for you? If you use the years of, it says the years of the wicked are cut short, and the fear of the Lord adds length to your life. So it can make you have you a longer length of life as far as going to heaven after you're gone, and it can also make you a little bit better while you're here, can't it? Generally. That's right. Exactly. That's why when you invited me to go to Vegas, I said no. Was it you?
Isn't that what wisdom is, though? Is having an opportunity to do something, seeing the problem with that, and then next time you've got the wisdom, not even to have to ask yourself that question.
Exactly. And if you don't do it, chances are whoever wanted you to do it will leave you alone, won't they? That's good. Next time, like you say, though, you don't even have to ask yourself, I'm not going to do those things or that thing. And I think that if you're a devout Christian and you're doing what God wants you to do based on what you know, based on your knowledge and wisdom of the verses, based on the teaching that you get and all of that stuff, I think you're going to end up being happy, calm, and without serious stress, even in stressful situations. Don't y'all think? Oh, don't you think most Christians are happy? Don't you think that's kind of a good sign for us? It's interesting to me that after the service and everything, it's hard to get the lights turned off, isn't it, Paul? Because everybody's happy and joyous and glad to be there and looking good. And us being happy and having good lives can also make us better preachers, can't it? We're supposed to go in the world and preach the gospel. Can you preach without actually getting on a podium and preach?
Yes.
Sure. You really can. And forgive me if I've mentioned this to you before, but when I lived in Charleston, one of the happiest people I ever saw was the guy that brought my propane out. He would bring it out, and he was dressed real nice, and he was so happy, and he'd say, watch this, buddy, and he'd toss that hose over there, and it'd fall right in the spot, and he'd go, whoa. He said, I got a great job, I got a wife and wonderful kids. I said, you're really happy. what is it? What's the deal with you? And he says, I'm a Christian. And that's all he said. But you know, that has an effect on people, especially people that aren't happy then. They see this guy, they see us, even if we're in Walmart and they see us and we're happy. I don't want y'all to go that far. But maybe Dillard's? Anyway, we can become better preachers. Now, can there be exceptions here? Can we take all of this to believe there's a promised guarantee of long life if we're believers? Can we be guaranteed we're going to have a long life in this world? How about the next world? Long life next world. How long is eternity? Pretty long. But we can't necessarily think that just because we do the right things that we're going to have a long life here. There's certain, and you know, got to remember, there's certain realities in the world that can surely affect even the most staunch believers' lives, such as wars, severe illnesses, DNA and genetic problems, and so forth. So it's dangerous for us to preach that it's okay not to, say, get a vaccine during a bubonic plague epidemic because you love the Lord and he probably wouldn't want you to do it and he's going to take care of you anyway. You got to have a little bit of realism sometimes in our lives, don't we? That doesn't mean we shouldn't trust the Lord and listen to his word and respond to the prayers we give to him, but that means we got to be a little bit smart sometimes. Unless, you know, we're driving on the highway where the speed limit's too low. That's different. But we do have to be realistic. And sometimes it's hard to do, to be realistic, you know. Sometimes you just want to go for it. But it's unwise to do that sometimes. Like I know it's unwise for me at 79 years old to go parasailing off, Mount Nebo. That, and I probably couldn't handle the job of driving a Formula One car at my age, and so forth. But that's just the way it is. Oh, speaking of jobs, let's consider for a minute what Proverbs says concerning hard work and poverty. Okay? There's 4 Proverbs here that we're going to look at about work and poverty. We're going to start with 10:4, which says, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Then Proverbs 14:23, we can read, all hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads to poverty. On to 13:23, where we see, an unplowed field produces food for the poor, but injustice sweeps it away. And then finally, number 4, Proverbs 28:8, which tells us, whoever increases wealth by taking interest or profit from the poor amasses it for another who will be kind to the poor. What do you think the general principle is in these 4 Proverbs? Take advantage. That's very good. Take advantage of your time. Anybody else? How do these things work together to describe the links between hard work, wealth, and poverty and injustice? How do all these things go together? Are they all related? Hard work, wealth, injustice, and poverty? Can they all come together? Okay. Sure they can. It's possible. If you keep in mind our Great Depression of the 1930s, one of the things history tells us that right before that, they had the roaring 1920s. You remember that, don't you, Fred? You remember the roaring? Okay. In 10:4, it says essentially that hard work can lead to success. And we have lots of examples to show us that, don't we, in this world? Hard work can lead to success. An example of that is, whether you like her or not, Oprah Winfrey. Do y'all know her story a little bit? Hard upbringing. Very, very bad. It's almost as bad as you could think of. But she worked as soon as she was able, and she ended up being extremely successful. Who do you think is the richest woman in the world today? Oprah Winfrey. And she did it all on her own. She didn't have a start like a lot of us have. Anybody have any examples of somebody that they know that worked really, really hard and ended up becoming successful? Anybody know of an example that would like to tell the class about? Does anybody personally worked hard and now you're successful? Has that happened to any of you? Y'all don't work hard? Not anymore. Oh, you're retired. Must be nice. I have a personal example that might ring a bell. My father, my dad, was the son of a guy who was a sharecropper. Who knows what that is? Everybody knows what a sharecropper is. Well, my dad was born in 22, and so when he was like 7 years old, a couple of things happened to him. One, his father, my grandfather, died of a heart attack. He was age 36. Then the Great Depression hit. So there my poor grandmother was with 3 boys and a girl and nothing. And back then they didn't have a lot of stuff, did they? A lot of ways that the government could help you. So there they were. The 2 other older brothers got put with families where they essentially, and they complained about it, became slaves. And then my grandmother got a job working at a place that sold clothes, just barely enough to make a living. And then my dad would shine shoes downtown in Mineral Well, Texas for a penny. And he gave every cent to the family. And then he ended up getting a super work ethic. Then the war came and he went to the war, and then he got out of the war and he got a job and worked, and ended up being very successful and making pretty good money. But it was all about work, using his hands for something. And you know, there's all kinds of stories, especially here in this country, about people like that. Anyway, don't mean to bore you, but that's too. Okay, 1423 says that laziness, no matter the scale, can lead to the anguish of an individual's poverty. So we don't need to be lazy, do we? Everybody agree? Is that hard to do? Hard not to be lazy? I don't know. 1323, the sharecropper type person's efforts can produce abundance, but sometimes the injustice of certain bosses can sweep the abundance out of their hands. But you know, hopefully there'll be a time when 28.8 kicks in and then the system can actually be kind to the poor. We know, though, that there are definite links between hard work and wealth and poverty and injustice. They're all linked together somehow. Can anybody remember the point in your lives when you determined that hard work could actually be good for you, could actually be the thing that you needed to do? Anybody remember when that hit you? Y'all all believe in hard work, right? I know y'all all do. When did it hit you, Paul, that you needed to go to work? 4 years in the Army. You said, I better go do something now. How about you? When did it hit you that you needed to bear down and get busy? Yesterday, all right. Sure. Okay. But when you were a kid, did something happen to you? Mm-hmm. You do. Absolutely. You certainly learn it, don't you? I bet you're a hard worker. Did something happen in your young life that made you that way? Never. Y'all are just way too funny. Yeah, that's right. It's not necessary, right? Okay. Now I discovered the advantage of hard work. The summer of my sophomore year in high school, I found myself one morning lying in the living room on the couch watching a baseball game. And my dad called me and said, "Mike, can you come in here a minute?" So I got up and I went in the kitchen, and he was at the table, and he had, y'all may remember this, a Montgomery Ward catalog. Y'all remember those? He said, "I'm going to order you kids, your clothes for the next school year." He said, "I just wanted to show you what I'm going to get for you." And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Oh, by the way, I was talking to the guy that owns a movie theater, and he said that he's going to need some people to work down there this summer." I said, "Whatever, you know." He said, "Anyway, this is what I'm going to get." And he opened the page up, and there were bib overalls like farmers wear. He said, "Okay, I'm going to get you like 2 of these, and that way you can clean one." And I said, "Whoa, wait a minute." I said, "There's no way that I could wear that to school." Because this was in the day when, James Dean, and you wore the Levi's low, and you turned your... I said, "No way can I do that." He said, "Well, this is how it is." He said, "If I have to pay for your clothes, I'm going to get something that lasts a long time, and these do." So, he said, "Do you want me to get them or not?" I said, "No, I don't want you to get them, and I'm going to go now. I'm going to go down and talk to the guy at the movie place." So that's kind of how I learned that, that work can help. Yeah.
I thought picking cotton was bad,
Yeah.
and we moved up here and got chicken houses, and I knew picking cotton was bad.
Picking cotton is not that bad compared to cleaning a chicken house, right? That's a fact. But we all end up, unless we're just born super rich or something, we all end up, finding out that it's good to work. Okay? All right, we've got 5 more minutes. We're going to move on now and start. Next time we're going to be starting, and we're going to be looking at gift giving. Okay? This is a super important thing. And until I started really reading Proverbs and studying it, I didn't really think of the importance of gift giving. We're going to go on that, and we're going to cover that in pretty much detail. And we're going to start with Proverbs 18:16, which says, "A gift ushers the way, and ushers give the giver into the presence of the great." So we're going to start with that next time. If y'all want to read about that, well, go ahead and read Proverbs 8:16 and on, and we'll do that. Anybody got any questions or comments they need to make? Well, I appreciate everybody that did today, and if not so, we're going to go ahead and visit around a little bit, because the crowd should be coming in pretty soon. Gift giving next Sunday. Thank y'all very much. Appreciate your attendance and your questions.